My daughter Sarah opened the door to my room and froze. Her eyes swept over the shredded mattress on the floor, the filthy blankets, and my torn clothes hanging from a rusty nail in the wall. "Mom, where is your bed? You get $6,000 a month in retirement benefits." Her voice trembled between confusion and rage. Before I could answer, Jessica appeared in the doorway with that cold smile I knew so well. "I decide how her money is spent," she declared with an air of superiority that made my blood run cold. My daughter slowly rolled up the sleeves of her shirt, and in that moment, I knew something was about to change. Something that would leave Jessica speechless. But to understand how I ended up sleeping on the floor like an abandoned animal, I have to go back 6 months. 6 months of humiliation that began the day after my husband's funeral. It was a Tuesday in October, 6:15 in the morning. The air was crisp, and the house smelled of freshly brewed coffee. But it wasn't for me. I woke up in the guest room, that tiny space at the back of my son Michael's house, where they had temporarily put me after I became a widow. The walls were a dull cream color, stained with dampness. The window looked out onto a dark alley where stray cats fought over trash every night. My bones ached. At 66 years old, sleeping on that thin mattress over an old wooden frame was like spending the night on rocks. I heard laughter in the kitchen. Jessica and Michael were having breakfast. I could smell the bacon, the scrambled eggs, the buttered toast. My stomach growled. It had been almost 12 hours since I had eaten anything. The night before, they had served me a watery soup with 2 pieces of carrot floating in it like shipwreck survivors. "We're just tightening the budget, Eleanor," Jessica had told me with that sweet, venomous voice she used when she wanted to sound reasonable. I got up slowly, feeling every joint crack. My bare feet touched the freezing floor. I looked for my slippers, those old gray ones with a hole in the right sole. I couldn't find them. I would later discover that Jessica had thrown them in the trash because they looked horrible and gave a bad impression if guests came over. I walked barefoot down the narrow hallway. The tile floor was so cold, it felt like walking on ice. Every step was a reminder of my new reality. Me, Eleanor, who had worked for 38 years as a registered nurse, who had raised 2 children, who had bought my own house with my own blood, sweat, and tears, was now dependent on the charity of my daughter-in-law. When I reached the kitchen, I saw the scene that would repeat every morning for months. Michael and Jessica sitting at the big table, with plates full of food. Freshly squeezed orange juice, fresh fruit, yogurt, freshly baked bread. And in the corner of the counter, a small plastic plate with 2 dry crackers and a glass of water. My breakfast. "Good morning," I said, my voice still raspy from sleep. Jessica looked up for barely a second. "Good morning, Eleanor. Your breakfast is over there." She pointed to the plastic plate without lifting her hand from her steaming mug of coffee. Michael didn't even look at me. He was focused on his phone, laughing at something on the screen. I took my plate and my glass of water. I didn't say anything. What could I say? This was their house. I was just a guest, a burden, a temporary nuisance until I could go back to my house, which was being repaired, or so they had told me. I sat on the stool by the refrigerator, far from the table. I bit into a cracker. It was hard as a rock. I had to dip it in the water to swallow it. As I chewed slowly, I watched Jessica. She was wearing a new workout set, one of those brands that cost over $200. Her nails were perfectly manicured, a bright coral color. Her hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. She looked radiant, prosperous, satisfied. I, on the other hand, was wearing the same threadbare nightgown I had been wearing for a week. I didn't have clean clothes. When I asked about my laundry, Jessica told me the washing machine was broken and I would have to wait. But clearly, they had clean clothes. Only I was trapped in this cycle of filth and neglect. "Eleanor," Jessica said suddenly, dabbing her mouth delicately with a cloth napkin, "we need to talk about your finances." I felt a knot in my stomach. My finances. "Yes, Michael and I have been reviewing your economic situation, and we're worried." Her tone was that of a teacher talking to a slow child. "You receive $6,000 a month from your pension, but you have no idea how to manage that money." "I have always managed my money perfectly," I replied, trying to stay calm. "I paid off my house, I raised my kids, I never had debt." Jessica let out a dry laugh. "That was years ago, Eleanor. Things are different now. You're older, more vulnerable. You could fall for scams, overspend, lose everything. You need help. I don't need help. I can handle my own money. Michael finally looked up from his phone. Mom, Jessica is right. We've seen cases of seniors losing their life savings because they didn't have proper supervision. I am not incompetent, I said, feeling indignation rise in my chest. I have been responsible my whole life. No one is saying you're incompetent, Jessica intervened with that fake sweetness. We just want to protect you. That's why we think it would be better if we managed your pension. That way, you ensure your money is safe and well invested. The words fell on me like stones. You want to control my pension. It's not controlling, it's managing, Jessica corrected. Look, we already spoke to a lawyer. You just need to sign a power of attorney authorizing us to handle your accounts. It's for your own good. I'm not signing that. Jessica's face hardened. The mask of kindness dropped for a second, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. Eleanor, you are living in our house, eating our food, using our utilities. The least you can do is trust us to take care of you completely. I can pay for my stay here. I can contribute. It's not about that, Michael said, but his voice sounded rehearsed, as if he were repeating words Jessica had taught him. It's about your well-being. If you sign the power of attorney, we can make sure you have everything you need. Everything you need. The words rang hollow. I looked at my plastic plate with the hard crackers. I looked at my dirty nightgown. I looked at the miserable room where I slept. If this was what they considered everything I needed, what would happen when they completely controlled my money? I need to think about it, I said finally. Jessica sighed dramatically. There isn't much to think about, Eleanor. But fine. You have until tomorrow to decide. After that, we'll have to take other measures. I didn't ask what other measures meant. The threat in her tone was clear enough. That night, lying on my thin mattress, I heard Jessica and Michael talking in their bedroom. The walls were so thin I could hear every word. Do you think she'll sign? Michael asked. She has to sign, Jessica replied. She has no choice. Where else is she going to go? Sarah is too far away and never visits. The old lady is alone. She needs us. And if she refuses? There was a pause. Then Jessica spoke with a coldness that chilled me to the bone. Then we make her life so miserable she'll beg to sign. It's simple. Michael, $6,000 a month is $72,000 a year. In 5 years, that's over $300,000. That money could be ours. We could remodel the house, buy a new car, invest. We just need her to sign that paper. My heart beat so fast I thought they could hear it. It wasn't protection they wanted. It was my money. All my money. And so began my nightmare. The next morning, I signed the power of attorney. Not because I wanted to, but because Jessica stopped giving me food entirely. When you sign, you eat, she told me with a smile while eating ham and eggs in front of me. My stomach had been empty for nearly 24 hours. My hands shook from hunger and weakness. I signed the paper with tears in my eyes, feeling like I was selling my soul. Very good, Eleanor, Jessica said, putting the document in a folder. Now everything will be better. You'll see. But nothing got better. Everything got worse. The first week after signing, Jessica informed me that my $6,000 monthly pension would be responsibly managed. That meant I wouldn't see a dime. Everything is being invested for your future, she would say. But I saw packages from expensive stores arriving every day. New clothes for Jessica, Italian shoes, designer handbags, a huge television for the living room, new furniture. My room, however, remained the same. The thin mattress, the moldy walls, the broken window that let in the night chill. Could you buy me a new blanket? I asked one afternoon. I get very cold at night. Jessica looked at me as if I had asked for a golden palace. Eleanor, I can't be spending on unnecessary things. We are saving your money for important things. That night, while Jessica and Michael went out to dinner at an expensive steakhouse, I curled up under my threadbare blanket with 2 holes in it, shivering from the cold. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and with each passing day, my situation became more degrading. They took away my cell phone. The plan is too expensive, Jessica said. Besides, who are you going to call? Nobody ever calls you. It was true that Sarah didn't call much. She lived 5 hours away, worked a ton, and had her own life. We had always been close, but distance and her responsibilities kept her busy. I had sent her a few text messages telling her I was fine, that Michael and Jessica were taking perfect care of me. Lies that Jessica forced me to write while watching over my shoulder. Then they took my house key. It's for safety, Michael explained. Sometimes you forget to lock up, and that's dangerous. I never forgot to lock up. But now I was a prisoner. I couldn't leave without them opening the door. I couldn't go for a walk, buy anything, or visit anyone. I was trapped. The food got worse. Breakfast, 2 crackers and water. Lunch, leftovers from what they had eaten the day before, usually cold and scarce. Dinner, watery soup or a piece of bread with margarine. Meanwhile, Jessica cooked feasts for herself and Michael. The smell of roast beef, baked chicken, pasta with delicious sauces tortured me every night. I started losing weight. My clothes hung off my increasingly thin frame. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. My eyes were sunken, my skin pale and wrinkled. I looked like a ghost of the woman I used to be. One afternoon I found Jessica in the kitchen, going through papers. I walked over and saw they were bank statements from my account. My pension came in punctually every month. $6,000 exactly, but the account was emptied in a matter of days. Transfers to Jessica's account, payments to department stores, restaurants, spas, trips. "What are you doing looking at my papers?" Jessica asked, snatching the statement from my hands. "That is my account statement," I said with the little courage I had left. "I want to know what my money is being spent on," Jessica laughed. A cruel laugh, full of contempt. "Your money is being invested wisely. You don't have to worry about the details. That's why you gave me power of attorney, remember? I see no investments. I only see spending on clothes and restaurants." Her expression changed. Her eyes darkened. She stepped close to me until our faces were inches apart. "Listen to me closely, Eleanor. You have no right to question anything. You live under my roof, eat my food, breathe my air. If you don't like how I handle things, the door is right there. Leave. But I warn you, you have nowhere to go. Your house is sold." I felt the floor sink beneath my feet. "What did you say?" "Your house. We sold it 2 months ago. We needed the money for investments. You signed the authorization, don't you remember?" I didn't remember. But I had signed so many papers in those months, always under pressure, always hungry, always confused. "That was my home," I whispered. It was the only thing I had left. It was an old house that needed too many repairs. "We did you a favor selling it. The money is safe, don't worry. Safe in her account," I thought. Safe to finance her luxurious lifestyle while I starved to death. That night I cried until I ran out of tears. I was completely alone. No home, no money, no phone, no freedom. I was a prisoner in my own son's house. And the worst part was that Michael knew. He saw everything and did nothing. When I tried to talk to him, he looked away. "Mom, Jessica knows what she's doing. Trust her." That was always his answer. My son, the boy I raised with so much love, had betrayed me for a cruel and ambitious woman. The following months were a downward spiral. My mattress broke completely, and I ended up sleeping directly on the floor, on a piece of thin foam. I asked for a new mattress. Jessica said there was no budget. But 2 days later, a $4,000 Italian leather sofa arrived for the living room. My clothes fell apart. My pants had holes in the knees. My blouses were stained and faded. I asked for new clothes. Jessica brought me 2 used t-shirts she had bought at a thrift store for $3 each. "This is enough," she said. "You're not going anywhere anyway." She was right. I never went out. I was invisible to the outside world. The bathroom they allowed me to use was the small powder room next to the kitchen. It had no heating. The hot water barely came out lukewarm. I showered quickly, shivering, using a cheap soap that irritated my skin. Meanwhile, Jessica bathed in the master bathroom with aromatic salts, essential oils, and soft towels. I could hear the water running for half an hour while she relaxed in the tub. The biggest humiliation came one Sunday afternoon. Guests arrived. Jessica's parents and her sister Natalie. The house was transformed. Jessica cooked a feast. She made lasagna, fresh salads, garlic bread, chocolate dessert. The table was beautifully set. Soft music, expensive wine, everything perfect. I peeked out from my room, drawn by the smell of the food. I was so hungry my stomach hurt. Jessica saw me. "Eleanor, stay in your room. We have guests." I thought I could say hello, I said with a weak voice. "I don't think that's appropriate. You're not presentable." She looked me up and down with evident disgust. "Besides, there isn't enough food for everyone. There was food to feed 10 people, but I wasn't worthy of sitting at the table." I went back to my room and closed the door. I heard the laughter, the conversations, the clinking of glasses. I smelled every dish that passed by and felt my stomach twist with hunger. That night, after the guests left, Jessica brought me a plate with 2 small pieces of cold, hard lasagna. "Leftovers," she said, leaving it on the floor next to my mattress, as if I were a dog. I sat on the floor and ate with my hands because she hadn't brought me silverware. Tears fell onto the cold food. I had hit rock bottom. They had reduced me to less than nothing. But the worst was yet to come. One morning in April, 2 weeks before Sarah showed up, I heard Jessica talking on the phone in the living room. Her voice was low, but I was close by, tidying the kitchen as I had been ordered to do every morning. "Yes, I'm looking for information on nursing homes," she was saying. "Something cheap. I don't need luxuries. Just a place where they can keep her quiet and controlled." My blood ran cold. She was talking about me. "Do you have availability for a 66-year-old woman?" "Perfect." "And the monthly costs?" $1,200. "Excellent." "Much cheaper than having her here," she laughed. A cold, calculating laugh. "No, she doesn't have serious health problems. She just needs to be in an environment where she can't cause trouble. You know what I mean." I kept scrubbing the dishes, making noise so she wouldn't suspect I was listening. "Send me the information by email." "Yes, that's my address." "Perfect. We'll be visiting soon." "Thanks." She hung up the phone and sighed with satisfaction. She was planning to get rid of me, lock me up in a cheap facility, while she continued collecting my $6,000 monthly pension. She would keep all the money, and I would be trapped in some horrible place where no one could find me. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. I had to do something. But what? I had no phone. I had no money. I had no way to contact anyone. I was completely isolated. The next day I tried something desperate. I waited for Jessica to go shopping and approached Michael, who was working on his computer in the study. "Michael, I need to talk to you," I said with a trembling voice. He didn't even look up. "I'm busy, Mom. It's important. Please." He sighed, irritated, and finally looked at me. "What is it?" I heard Jessica talking on the phone. "She's planning to put me in a nursing home." Michael shrugged. "Maybe it's for the best. You'd be cared for professionally there. I don't want to go to a home. I want my life back. I want my money back. I want my dignity." "Mom, we already talked about this. Jessica manages your money because you can't. It's for your own good." "It is not for my own good," I shouted, losing control. "You are robbing me. You have me living like a homeless person while you spend my pension on luxuries. And now you want to lock me away so no one knows what you're doing." Michael stood up abruptly, his face hardened. "I'm not going to tolerate you talking about my wife like that. Jessica does everything for you. She gives you a roof, food, care, and you just complain. You're ungrateful." The words hit me like slaps. "Michael, I am your mother." "Exactly. You are my mother. And as your son, I am making the right decisions for your well-being. If Jessica thinks a nursing home is best, then it's best. And my opinion doesn't count? Your opinion is clouded by your age and your refusal to accept help. Now let me work." He turned his back on me and returned to his computer. The conversation was over. My own son had abandoned me. I left the study feeling like my heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces. Michael wasn't just an accomplice. He was an active traitor. He knew exactly what was happening, and he approved of it completely. That afternoon, while Jessica cooked for herself and Michael, I heard more of their plans. They spoke in low voices, but the walls were so thin that every word reached my ears clearly. "The facility I found is perfect," Jessica said. "It's 2 hours from here. No one will visit her. And the best part is we can tell Sarah that her mom is happy in a nice retirement community. By the time she realizes the truth, years will have passed." "And if Sarah wants to visit her?" Michael asked. we'll give excuses. That she's sick, that she can't receive visitors, whatever. Sarah lives too far away to verify. Besides, she hardly ever calls. I don't think it'll be a problem. How much longer can we keep collecting her pension? Jessica laughed. Until she dies, obviously. And with the health she has from the malnutrition, I don't think she has many years left. 5, maybe 6 tops. That would give us almost $400,000 additional dollars. Enough to buy that beach house we always wanted. They were planning my death, counting the years I had left, as if they were returns on an investment. Talking about my deterioration as something convenient. My own children. Well, my son and the woman who had turned him into a monster. I curled up on my mattress on the floor, hugging my knees to my chest, feeling the night cold seep in through the broken window. I had lost everything. My house, my money, my dignity, my son. I only had the end to wait for. Waiting to be dragged to that horrible asylum where I would disappear from the world without anyone noticing. But then, a week later, something happened they didn't expect. It was a Saturday morning. I heard the doorbell ring. Voices in the entryway. A familiar voice I hadn't heard in months. My heart skipped a beat. Sarah had arrived. She hadn't announced she was coming. Jessica and Michael were caught off guard. I heard Jessica's nervous voice trying to sound casual. "Sarah, what a surprise. We didn't know you were coming." There was an uncomfortable silence. "Your mom is resting. Maybe it's not a good time to bother her." But Sarah wasn't a woman who accepted evasions. "I just drove 5 hours. I want to see my mother. Now." Her footsteps echoed down the hallway. Fast. Determined. The door to my room flew open, and there she was. My daughter. My Sarah. With her brown eyes that had always been so similar to mine, looking at me with a mix of confusion and growing horror, she saw me on the floor. On that shredded mattress that didn't even deserve to be called a mattress anymore. She saw my skeletal body covered in clothes that looked like dirty rags. She saw the moldy walls, the broken window, the cold that made me shiver. She saw everything I had endured in silence for 6 interminable months. "Mom." Her voice cracked. "Where is your bed? You receive $6,000 a month in benefits." Before I could answer, Jessica appeared behind her. That woman had a special talent for showing up at the exact moment she could cause the most damage. "Sarah, it's not what it looks like. Your mom prefers sleeping like this. She says it's more comfortable for her back." Sarah turned slowly toward Jessica. I saw something in my daughter's eyes I had never seen before. A cold, controlled fury that was scarier than any scream. My mother prefers sleeping on the floor? In a room with mold and no heating? In clothes that look like they came out of a dumpster? "She is very particular with her things," Jessica continued with that sweet, poisonous voice. "We have offered her everything, but she refuses our help. She's very stubborn. You know how old people are. Don't treat me like I'm stupid." Sarah took a step toward Jessica. "Where is my mother's money?" Jessica lifted her chin with an air of superiority. "I decide how her money is spent. I have power of attorney to manage her finances. Everything is being invested wisely for her future. Invested." Sarah pointed around the miserable room. "This is an investment? Letting my mother live like a homeless person while you—" Her eyes swept over Jessica from top to bottom. "You're wearing designer clothes and expensive jewelry." I saw Sarah's hands curl into fists. I saw her slowly roll up the sleeves of her shirt, that gesture she always made when she was about to go into action. And then she said something that made Jessica go pale. "I am a lawyer, specializing in family law and elder protection, and what you are doing is called financial abuse and gross negligence. Those are federal crimes." The silence that followed was absolute. Jessica opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her face of smugness crumbled like a house of cards. Sarah knelt beside me. Her hands touched my face with infinite tenderness. "Mom, when was the last time you ate something decent?" I couldn't answer. The tears I had held back for months exploded. I cried like a lost child, clinging to my daughter as if she were my only connection to the real world. "Yesterday they gave me watery soup," I whispered between sobs, "and today only 2 crackers." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but her jaw tightened with determination. She stood up and faced Jessica again. "Get dressed, Mom. I'm taking you out of here right now. You can't just take her like that. Jessica intervened, recovering some composure. This is our house. She is under our legal care. Legal care. Sarah let out a bitter laugh. This isn't care. This is torture. And I'm going to make sure you face the consequences. Michael appeared in the doorway. Sarah, you're misinterpreting the situation. Mom is well taken care of. Sarah turned to her brother. The disappointment on her face was devastating. Michael, look at yourself. Look at what you've become. You let this woman torture our mother for money. This is how you repay everything she did for us. You don't understand anything, Michael muttered, looking at the floor. He couldn't hold his sister's gaze. I understand perfectly. I understand that you sold your soul and our mother's dignity for comfort. And you are going to pay for that. Sarah helped me up. My legs barely held me after months of malnutrition. I leaned on her, and we walked toward the door. Jessica tried to block our path. If you take her out of here, I'm going to call the police. It's kidnapping. Sarah pulled out her phone. Perfect. Let's call the police together. I'll show them the state I found my mother in. The conditions you kept her in. The bank statements that I am sure will prove embezzlement. Please, call. I beg you. Jessica turned even paler. She didn't call anyone. We walked out of that house from hell. The afternoon sun hit my face, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Sarah took me straight to her car. She settled me in the passenger seat with care, as if I were made of glass. Before starting the engine, she dialed a number on her phone. Brenda, it's Sarah. I need you to come to Michael's house right now. Bring your camera. We're going to document everything, she paused. Yes, everything. The room, the conditions, everything. This is going to be evidence. Brenda was the next-door neighbor, an older woman who had always been kind to me in the few moments they allowed me out into the yard. Sarah had met her years ago and kept in occasional contact. While we waited for Brenda to arrive, Sarah bought me food. We went into a diner, and she ordered hot soup, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables. She told me to eat slowly because my stomach wasn't used to real food. Every bite was glory. Every sip of hot soup was life returning to my body. I cried while I ate. Sarah took my hand and cried with me. Forgive me, Mom. I should have come sooner. I should have suspected when your messages became so short and strange. I should have known. It's not your fault, I said with a raspy voice. They were very careful. They isolated me completely. After eating, we went back to the house. Brenda was already there with her camera. Sarah explained the situation, and they went in together. Jessica and Michael couldn't stop them because Brenda knew her rights. She photographed every inch of my room. The destroyed mattress on the floor, the moldy walls, the broken window, my threadbare clothes hanging from the rusty nail. Everything was documented. Meanwhile, Sarah went straight to Michael's study and demanded to see all the financial documents. Michael tried to refuse, but Sarah threatened him with immediate legal action. You choose. Michael, you give me access now voluntarily, or I come back tomorrow with a court order and police officers. What do you prefer? Michael, a coward, as always, caved. Sarah spent 2 hours reviewing bank statements, transfers, documents. Her face grew paler with every page she read. Finally, she looked up with an expression that mixed rage and nausea. $72,000 in 6 months, she said with a trembling voice. They spent $72,000 of Mom's pension. On clothes, restaurants, furniture, trips, spas. And Mom was sleeping on the floor eating leftovers. Jessica tried to justify herself. Those are necessary investments to keep the house in good condition. Your mother benefits indirectly. Sarah looked at her with absolute contempt. Investments. Sarah held up a statement. Here it says $1,200 at a spa, $2,000 at a luxury restaurant, $3,500 on handbags. How does that benefit my mother, who doesn't even have a decent plate to eat off of? Jessica didn't answer. For the first time since I met her, she had no words. Her mask of superiority had fallen completely, and the only thing left was a greedy woman, exposed in all her moral misery. Sarah put all the documents in a large folder. This is going straight to the district attorney. And believe me, I'm going to personally make sure this goes to the fullest extent of the law. That night, I slept at Sarah's house. In a real bed, with clean sheets that smelled of lavender, with a soft, warm blanket, with fluffy pillows. I cried with relief until I fell asleep. For the first time in 6 months, I slept without cold, without hunger, without fear. The next morning, Sarah made a full breakfast. Scrambled eggs, bacon, buttered toast, fresh orange juice, coffee with milk, fruit. I sat at the table and looked at all that food in disbelief. Eat all you want, Mom. This is yours. No one is going to take it away from you. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, feeling my weak body begin to receive the nutrition it needed so badly. After breakfast, Sarah took me to the doctor. Dr. Henderson, a man in his 50s with a kind face, examined me completely. His expression darkened as he checked my vital signs, my weight, my general condition. Mrs. Eleanor, you are severely malnourished, he said with a serious voice. You have lost nearly 45 pounds. You have severe anemia, vitamin deficiency, chronic dehydration. Your blood pressure is dangerously low. This is consistent with prolonged and deliberate neglect. Sarah was taking notes on every word. Doctor, I need this officially recorded in a full medical report, with photographs if possible. It will be evidence in a legal case. Dr. Henderson nodded gravely. Of course. And I must inform you that I am mandated by law to report this to Adult Protective Services. This constitutes abuse. Before continuing, if you are feeling the outrage I felt, hit the like button and comment if this has ever happened to someone you know, because what comes next was even more disturbing. While we were in the office, Sarah's phone rang. It was Brenda, the neighbor. Sarah, you need to know something. This morning I saw Jessica taking trash bags out of the house, lots of bags. It seemed suspicious, so I checked when she left. I found torn documents in the bin. Bank statements, receipts, legal papers. They are trying to destroy evidence. Sarah's eyes shone with determination. Don't move. I'm heading there right now with a preservation order. And call the police. Tell them there is destruction of evidence in process. We left the doctor's office straight for Michael's house. When we arrived, there was a police cruiser outside. Brenda was talking to 2 officers, showing them the trash bags with torn documents. Jessica came out of the house, furious. This is an invasion of privacy. You can't go through my trash. One of the officers, a tall man named Officer Morales, according to his badge, explained patiently. Ma'am, once the trash is on the curb, it is public property, and we have a complaint of destruction of evidence in an elder abuse case. We're going to need you to cooperate. Sarah approached with the folder of documents she had compiled. Officer Morales, I am an attorney representing my mother, Eleanor. I have evidence of financial abuse, gross negligence, and embezzlement by my sister-in-law Jessica and my brother Michael. Here are bank statements, medical reports, and photographs of the conditions they kept my mother in. The officer reviewed the documents. His expression hardened. This is very serious. We're going to need statements from everyone involved. Michael came out of the house, pale as a ghost. Sarah, please. We can resolve this as a family. There's no need to involve the police. As a family. Sarah looked at him with disbelief. You let our mother starve to death while you spent her money on luxuries. There is no family here, Michael. Only criminals. The following days were a whirlwind of legal activity. Sarah worked tirelessly. She hired David, a lawyer specializing in financial elder abuse cases. Together, they built a solid case. David was a meticulous and brilliant man. He reviewed every document, every transfer, every expense. This is one of the worst cases I've seen, he told me during a meeting. They not only stole her money, but they tortured her psychologically. They isolated her, starved her, destroyed her self-esteem. This goes beyond financial abuse. It's torture. Sarah also investigated on her own. She discovered something that froze my blood. She went into the search history on Michael's computer. Among the recent searches were things that made me tremble. Low-cost nursing homes. How to sedate an elderly person naturally. Medication to make old people sleep. Average life expectancy after 65. How to accelerate cognitive decline in seniors. Sarah printed everything. Every search, every page visited. She added it to the file that grew day by day. Mom, she told me one night while we were having dinner, they didn't just want your money. They wanted you to die quickly. The searches prove it. They were researching ways to speed up your deterioration to keep everything sooner. The words fell on me like stones. My own son had searched for ways to shorten my life. It wasn't just greed, it was something much darker and malevolent. Sarah also found text messages between Jessica and Michael. Conversations on a messaging app they thought they had deleted, but a digital forensic expert recovered. A message from Jessica said, "If you give her less food, she'll get weaker faster. Less medical expenses later." Michael's response, "Are you sure? I don't want it to look obvious." Jessica, "No one suspects anything. Sarah never visits. Your mother has no one else. We can do whatever we want." Another message from Jessica, sent 2 weeks before Sarah appeared. "I found the nursing home, $1,200 a month. We'd keep $4,800 a month in profit. In 3 years, that would be over $170,000 clean." Michael, "And if she asks about her money?" Jessica, "We'll tell her it's being spent on her care. She's too confused to understand. Besides, once she's medicated in the home, she won't be able to protest." Every message was a stab wound. Every word revealed the depth of their betrayal. They weren't just thieves. They were calculating monsters who had planned my systematic destruction. Sarah compiled everything into a massive file. Bank statements showing $72,000 spent in 6 months. Photographs of my miserable room. Medical reports documenting severe malnutrition. Statements from Brenda about what she had witnessed. Internet search histories. Recovered messages. Everything was there. Every piece of evidence meticulously organized. David filed a civil lawsuit for embezzlement, financial abuse, gross negligence, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. He also filed a criminal complaint with the district attorney's office for the same charges. "They are going to face severe consequences," David assured me. "This isn't going to go unpunished." Meanwhile, Sarah took care of something just as important. She went to the bank with all the documents proving that the power of attorney had been obtained under duress and deception. The bank manager, a woman named Linda, reviewed everything with attention. "This is clearly a case of financial abuse," Linda said. "We are going to freeze all accounts immediately and reverse any authorization Jessica had over your finances." In a matter of hours, Jessica lost all access to my money. The automatic transfers stopped. The cards linked to my account that she used were canceled. Sarah also changed my will. The previous one, which had been modified during my captivity, left everything to Michael. The new will was clear and forceful. Michael was completely disinherited. Every penny, every property, every possession I had would go to Sarah. And there was a special clause, David suggested. If Michael or Jessica tried to contest the will, they would automatically lose any right, even to sentimental objects. "I want them to know their actions have permanent consequences," I said as I signed the document. My hand shook, but my decision was firm. We also recovered the money from the sale of my house. Turns out Jessica had lied about the terms. The sale had been done through a realtor, and the money, $180,000, was deposited in an account that was supposedly an investment for my future. But the statements showed that Jessica had been transferring large amounts every month to her personal accounts. With Sarah's legal intervention, we managed to freeze that account too and recover the remaining funds. There were $142,000 left. The other $38,000 had been spent on Jessica's luxuries in just 2 months. Every day we discovered something new and horrible. Sarah found receipts for expensive jewelry, trips to beach resorts, designer clothes, all paid for with my money while I slept on the floor eating leftovers. One afternoon, while reviewing more documents in David's office, we discovered something that left us breathless. Jessica had taken out a life insurance policy in my name, a policy for $300,000. The beneficiary was herself. David looked up from the document with a grave expression. "This changes everything." A life insurance policy under these circumstances, combined with the searches about sedatives and nursing homes, with the documented physical deterioration. This could be interpreted as attempted, premeditated murder. The words floated in the air like toxic smoke. Attempted murder. My daughter-in-law didn't just want my money. She wanted my death. And she had planned it meticulously. Sarah immediately called the district attorney's office. The case, which was already serious, became absolutely criminal. A prosecutor named Mr. Patterson was assigned to the case. He was a man in his 40s, with a reputation for being relentless in elder abuse cases. "Mrs. Eleanor," he told me during our first meeting, "I'm going to ensure these people pay for every day of suffering they caused you. This isn't just a financial crime. It is systematic torture with possible attempted murder. They are going to prison." The following weeks were intense. Prosecutor Patterson built a solid criminal case. He subpoenaed Brenda as a witness. She testified about the conditions I was kept in, how I looked thinner and sicker every time she saw me, about how Jessica had threatened her when she tried to ask about me. "I told Jessica that Eleanor looked very bad," Brenda testified, "and she told me to mind my own business or I would have problems. She threatened me. Since then I was afraid to intervene, but I always knew something terrible was happening." They also called Dr. Henderson as an expert witness. He explained in detail the state of severe malnutrition in which he found me, how that could only be the result of prolonged and intentional neglect, how my body showed signs of systematic abuse. Linda from the bank also testified about the suspicious transactions, about how Jessica withdrew large amounts regularly while my personal expense account remained empty. The digital forensic expert presented the recovered messages between Jessica and Michael. Every message was read aloud in court during the preliminary hearing. I saw people in the room hold their breath, hearing the coldness with which they spoke of my deterioration as if it were a business plan. The hearing was devastating for Jessica and Michael. The judge, an older man with a serious expression, looked at them with evident disgust. "In my 30 years as a judge, I have seen many abuse cases," he said. "But the calculated cruelty shown in these messages, the systematic planning of this lady's deterioration, is one of the most disturbing cases I have encountered. I am ordering a full trial, and until then, both defendants are under a restraining order. You cannot approach the victim within 500 yards. Jessica tried to speak, but her lawyer stopped her. Michael cried like a child, but his tears didn't move me. He had 6 months to cry for me while he watched me suffer. His tears now were just fear of the consequences." While the criminal case unfolded, Sarah also pushed the civil case. We sued for damages, emotional suffering, medical expenses, and full restitution of all stolen funds. Jessica's lawyers tried to settle. They offered to return $40,000 if we dropped the charges. Sarah laughed in their faces. "My mother suffered 6 months of torture. She lost 45 pounds. She slept on the floor. She ate leftovers. She was humiliated, isolated, abused. And you offer $40,000? No deal. This goes to trial, and we are going to win every penny plus punitive damages." She was right. When we finally reached civil court, the jury deliberated for only 3 hours. The verdict was unanimous. Jessica and Michael were found liable for embezzlement, financial abuse, gross negligence, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and conspiracy. The ordered damages were devastating for them. $72,000 in restitution for the stolen pension money, $38,000 for funds taken from the house sale, $200,000 in compensatory damages, and $500,000 in punitive damages. Total, $840,000. They didn't have that money. Not even remotely close. The judge ordered the seizure of their house, their bank accounts, their vehicles, everything. The house where I had been held prisoner was put up for forced sale. The luxury cars they bought with my money were confiscated. The jewelry, the designer clothes, the expensive furniture, everything was auctioned off. I watched their world of luxury crumble piece by piece. The same house where I slept on the floor now had a foreclosure sign in the yard. The same cars that drove past me when they forced me to walk to the market because they didn't want to drive me were now being towed by court order. But the criminal case was even more satisfying. Prosecutor Patterson presented every piece of evidence meticulously. The messages, the internet searches, the life insurance, the medical reports, the photographs of my room, the witness testimonies. During the trial, I had to testify. It was painful to relive every moment of humiliation. But I looked Jessica directly in the eyes while I described how she let me sleep on the floor while she bought $4,000 sofas, while I explained how I ate 2 crackers a day while they feasted on banquets. Jessica avoided my gaze. Michael wept silently. But I no longer felt pity for them. I only felt the need for justice to be done. The jury in the criminal case also deliberated for a short time, guilty on all counts: aggravated embezzlement, elder abuse, criminal negligence, conspiracy to commit fraud, and the most serious, attempted murder in the second degree based on the life insurance, the searches about sedatives, and the plan to accelerate my deterioration. The sentencing came 3 weeks later. The day of the sentencing, the courtroom was full. Brenda was there to support me. Dr. Henderson also came. Sarah was by my side, holding my hand tightly. The judge reviewed the documents in front of him for what seemed like an eternity. Finally, he looked up and spoke with a firm, clear voice. "Jessica Castillo and Michael Mendez, rise." Both stood up slowly. Jessica tried to maintain composure, but her hands were shaking. Michael was deathly pale. "I have reviewed this case exhaustively," the judge began, "and I must say the systematic cruelty demonstrated here is deeply disturbing. You didn't just steal a vulnerable woman's money. You tortured her psychologically. You starved her. You isolated her. You destroyed her dignity day after day. And you did it not out of necessity, but out of pure greed. You planned her deterioration as if it were a financial investment. This deserves no leniency." He paused. The silence in the room was absolute. "Jessica Castillo, as the principal author of these crimes, I sentence you to 12 years in prison for aggravated embezzlement, elder abuse, criminal negligence, and attempted murder in the second degree. Additionally, you will be permanently barred from working in any position involving the care of the elderly or handling others' finances." Jessica collapsed in her chair. Her sobs filled the room. But the judge wasn't finished. "Michael Mendez, as an accomplice and conspirator, you betrayed your own mother in the vilest way. I sentence you to 8 years in prison for the same charges. And I want you to know that society expects more from a son. You didn't just fail as a son, you failed as a human being." Michael wept openly. He tried to look at me, perhaps seeking some gesture of forgiveness, but I looked away. I had no forgiveness to give him. "Both will be remanded to custody immediately," the judge continued. "There is no possibility of bail during appeals. This court considers you a danger to vulnerable adults. Officers, please." 2 officers approached. They handcuffed Jessica and Michael. I watched as they were led out of the room. Jessica screamed that it was unfair, that she had only wanted to help Liz until the very last moment. Michael simply cried. The doors closed behind them, and for the first time in almost a year, I felt I could breathe completely. Outside the court, reporters were waiting for us. The case had attracted media attention. "Tortures mother-in-law while stealing pension," the newspapers had headlined. "Son accomplice in systematic abuse of elderly mother." The stories were everywhere. Sarah gave a brief statement. "This case proves that elder abuse is real and devastating. My mother suffered horrors no one should experience. But today, justice was served, and I hope this case serves as a warning. Elder abuse will not go unpunished." The following days were strange. After so long fighting, so much tension, so much pain, there was finally silence, peace, justice. But there was something else I needed to do. Something that had been brewing in my heart throughout the process. One afternoon, 2 months after the sentencing, I called Sarah into the living room. "Honey, I need to talk to you about something important." "Sure, Mom. What is it?" "I want to do something with my story. Something that helps other people." Sarah sat next to me, interested. "What do you have in mind?" For months, I was completely alone, isolated, voiceless, without help. And I know there are thousands of seniors in the same situation right now, suffering in silence, not knowing there are laws protecting them, not knowing they can ask for help. My voice grew firmer. "I want to create a foundation, a place where seniors can report abuse anonymously, where they can receive free legal aid, where someone listens to them and believes them." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, that's beautiful. I have the money recovered from the lawsuit, $840,000. I want to use a part of it to establish the foundation, hire lawyers, social workers, create a direct helpline, call it Silenced Voices, so all the voiceless seniors know there is a place where they can be heard." Sarah hugged me tight. "Let's do it, Mom. Let's turn your pain into something that helps thousands of people." And so we did. 3 months later, We inaugurated the Silenced Voices Foundation. We rented a small but functional office. We hired 2 lawyers specializing in elder protection, a social worker, a person to handle the telephone helpline that operated 24 hours a day. The response was overwhelming. In the first week, we received 73 calls, 73 seniors reporting abuse, neglect, theft by family members. Every story was an echo of my own experience. Every call was a reminder of why this was so necessary. We helped a 72-year-old woman whose son had stolen her life savings, an 80-year-old man who lived locked in a basement while his daughter rented out the rest of his house, an elderly couple whose grandchildren had convinced them to sign over their house in exchange for care that never arrived. Every case we resolved, every person we helped, healed a little piece of my own wound. My suffering hadn't been in vain. I was creating real change. Sarah worked tirelessly by my side. We also started giving talks at community centers, churches, senior groups. We educated on the signs of financial abuse, on legal rights, on how to ask for help, on how to protect oneself. Elder abuse thrives in silence, I would say in every talk. It thrives in isolation. It thrives when victims are ashamed to speak up. But today, I am here to tell you, do not be ashamed. You are not alone, and help is available. One afternoon, 6 months after opening the foundation, I received a letter. It was from a woman named Ashley, 68 years old. She wrote, "Dear Eleanor, I saw your story on the news, and for the first time in 3 years, I had the courage to call your foundation. I was living exactly what you lived. My son-in-law controlled my pension. He had me isolated. I barely ate. I thought it was my fault, that I was a burden. But your story showed me I wasn't alone. I called the foundation. They helped me. Now I am free. I recovered my money. I recovered my life. And it is all thanks to you. You saved my life without even knowing it. Thank you for turning your pain into hope for others." I cried reading that letter. I kept it in a frame on my desk. It was the reminder of why everything I had suffered now had a purpose. 1 year after the sentencing, I visited the prison where Jessica was. Not to forgive her, but to close that chapter completely. I sat across from her, separated by thick glass. She looked different. No makeup, no expensive clothes. Without that arrogance that had always characterized her, she looked small, broken, defeated. "Why did you come?" she asked with a dull voice. "I came to tell you something you need to hear." She waited in silence. "What you did to me almost destroyed me, almost took away my will to live. But you didn't succeed. Instead, you gave me a purpose greater than I ever imagined. Thanks to your cruelty, now I help hundreds of people. Every person we save from a situation like mine is a testimony that your evil didn't win. You turned my suffering into strength, and that is something you can never take away from me." Jessica looked down. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I'm sorry for everything I did." "I don't believe you," I replied calmly. "And frankly, I don't care if it's true or not. I didn't come here looking for your repentance. I came to close that door on you forever. When you get out of here in 12 years, if you get out, you will have nothing to do with me or my family. You will be alone, just as you left me. And maybe then you will understand a fraction of the pain you caused." I stood up to leave. Jessica tried to say something else, but I didn't care to listen anymore. That part of my life was over. Michael tried to contact me several times from prison. Long letters full of apologies, explanations about how Jessica had manipulated him, pleas for forgiveness. I read them all, and I tore them all up. Finally, I wrote him a single response letter. It was short and direct. "Michael, you were my son. I raised you with love. I gave you everything I had. And when I needed you most, you chose money over me. You chose comfort over my well-being. You saw how I suffered and did nothing. That is not manipulation. That is cowardice and betrayal. I don't hate you, but I don't forgive you either. You simply no longer exist to me. Have the life you deserve." Eleanor. I never answered his letters again. Life went on. I moved permanently with Sarah. She insisted I live with her and her family. I had a beautiful room overlooking the garden, a comfortable bed with clean sheets, abundant and nutritious food 3 times a day. But more than that, I had love. I had respect. I had dignity. I regained the weight I had lost. Dr. Henderson monitored my health regularly. Little by little, my body healed. My cheeks regained color. My eyes sparkled again. My hair, which had become dull and brittle, began to look healthy again, but the emotional scars took longer to heal. For months, I had nightmares. I dreamed I was back in that cold room, on that mattress on the floor, hearing Jessica laugh while she ate. I would wake up sweating, heart racing. Sarah got me a therapist, Dr. Natalie, specializing in trauma and abuse. The sessions were difficult. I had to confront not only what had been done to me, but also the guilt I felt for not defending myself sooner, for signing that power of attorney, for allowing it all to happen. Eleanor, Dr. Natalie told me in a particularly emotional session, you didn't allow anything. You were a victim of systematic manipulation, psychological abuse, and coercion. None of what happened was your fault. They used your love, your trust, your vulnerability against you. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Those words were liberating. I started to let go of the guilt I had carried. I started to understand that being a victim didn't mean being weak. It meant someone else had chosen to do evil. The foundation kept growing. By the second year, we had 3 offices in different cities. We had helped over 500 seniors recover their autonomy, their money, their dignity. Every case won was a victory not just for them, but for me too. I started receiving invitations to speak at national conferences on elder protection. I became a voice for the voiceless. Politicians started listening. New laws were proposed to better protect the elderly. Stricter laws against financial abuse. Severer penalties. Better oversight of powers of attorney and legal guardianships. One of the laws, approved 2 years after my case, was informally called Eleanor's Law. It required that any financial power of attorney over a senior citizen be supervised by a neutral third party every 3 months, that there be mandatory reporting to the bank, that any drastic change in the agent's lifestyle be automatically investigated while the senior lived in precarious conditions. When I was invited to the signing ceremony of the law, I couldn't hold back tears. The governor hugged me and said, "Your suffering has saved thousands of people who don't even know they were in danger." That is an extraordinary legacy. But not everything was work and activism. I also learned to live again, to enjoy the little things. Quiet breakfasts with Sarah, afternoons reading in the garden, family dinners where we laughed and shared stories. Sarah introduced me to a group of older women who met every week to drink coffee and talk. At first, I was shy, still carrying the scars of my isolation, but they welcomed me with warmth. They listened to me, they understood me. Some had gone through their own experiences of abuse or loss. We became a chosen family, a mutual support system. One of them, a woman named Linda, 73 years old, became especially close. She had lost her husband years ago and understood the pain of rebuilding a life after loss. "Life takes things from us," she told me one afternoon while we drank tea, "but it also gives us opportunities to reinvent ourselves. You have taken the worst possible experience and turned it into something beautiful. That requires a strength few people have." Sarah's grandchildren, who at first looked at me with curiosity and a little pity, became an essential part of my healing. They called me Grandma Eleanor. They asked me to tell them stories. They included me in their games. Their innocent and pure love reminded me that there was still goodness in the world. One day, 3 years after my liberation, I was giving a talk at a community center. In the audience, I saw a young woman, maybe 30 years old, weeping silently while I spoke. After the talk, she approached me. "My grandmother is going through exactly what you went through," she said between sobs. "She lives with my uncle and his wife. They keep her isolated. They don't let us visit her. When we manage to see her, she is very thin and scared. But my uncle says she is fine, that she's just old and confused. I didn't know what to do until I heard your story. Now I know I can do something, that I must do something." We helped her. Through the foundation, we investigated the case. We discovered that this woman's grandmother was in conditions similar to those I had suffered. We intervened legally. We rescued her. The uncle and his wife faced charges. The grandmother recovered and went to live with her granddaughter. Months later, I received a photo. the grandmother, now healthy and smiling, surrounded by her family at a birthday celebration. On the back of the photo was a note. "Thank you for teaching us that silence is not acceptable. Thank you for showing us that true love fights. You saved my grandmother's life, and you saved us all from becoming silent accomplices." I kept that photo next to Ashley's letter. My collection of touched lives grew, and with each one, my own healing deepened. 4 years after everything happened, I decided to do something Sarah thought I was crazy for considering. I wanted to go back to the house where I had suffered. The house had been sold in foreclosure. A young family lived there now. I asked for permission to visit. I explained my story. They agreed, moved. I entered that house with Sarah by my side. Everything looked different. They had remodeled, painted, changed the furniture. But the hallways were the same. The doors were the same. I walked to the room where I had slept on the floor. Now it was a nursery, full of toys and bright colors. A crib in the corner, drawings on the walls. Life and joy where before there was only darkness and despair. I stood in the doorway of that room looking at the transformation. Tears ran down my face. But this time they weren't from pain, they were from liberation. The place that had been my prison was now a space of love and happiness for another family. The cycle had been broken. The darkness had been replaced by light. "Are you okay?" asked the young mother who lived there now, with concern in her voice. "I am more than okay," I replied with a smile. "I am free. Truly free." We left the house. Sarah hugged me tight. "I'm proud of you, Mom. Not all victims become survivors, and not all survivors become warriors. But you did." That night, back in my comfortable, warm room at Sarah's house, I reflected on everything I had lived. I had gone from being a broken woman sleeping on the floor, eating leftovers, without hope, to being a voice for thousands. I had transformed the deepest betrayal into a greater purpose. I thought of Jessica, serving her sentence in prison, probably still not really understanding the damage she caused. I thought of Michael, who I learned had attempted suicide twice in prison out of guilt. I felt no satisfaction in his suffering. I only felt a distant sadness for what could have been and never was. I thought of the 500 families we had helped, of the lives saved, of the seniors who regained their dignity, of the abusers who faced justice. That was my true legacy. In the 5th year of the foundation, we organized a special event. We invited everyone we had helped. The hall was full of smiling faces, stories of survival, gratitude, seniors who had regained their lives, families who had learned to protect their loved ones, lawyers and social workers committed to the cause. They asked me to give a speech. I stood in front of everyone with a full heart. 5 years ago, I was invisible, I began. I was a woman without a voice, without power, without hope. I slept on the floor while my own son and his wife stole my life, piece by piece. I thought that was my end, that I would die alone, forgotten, destroyed. I paused, looking at all the attentive faces, but I was wrong. That wasn't my end. It was my beginning, because from that suffering, something more powerful than pain was born. The determination that no other person would have to go through the same thing was born. This foundation was born. A movement was born. Tears flowed freely now, but my voice was steady. Every single one of you in this room is proof that darkness does not win, that abusers do not have the last word, that justice, even if late, arrives, and that from the deepest pain, you can make the greatest purpose. The room erupted in applause. People stood up. I saw tears on many faces. Sarah hugged me on stage, whispering in my ear, "Dad would be so proud of you." After the event, a reporter asked me for an interview. It was for an article on seniors who had transformed tragedy into triumph. "Mrs. Eleanor," she asked me, "if you could say something to your past self, to that woman sleeping on the floor 5 years ago, what would you say?" I thought carefully before answering. I would tell her to hang on, that the darkness isn't forever, that even though it seems like the world has forgotten her right now, there are people who love her, that she is about to discover a strength she didn't even know she had, and that her suffering will not be in vain, that from those ashes she is going to rise stronger, wiser, more compassionate. I would tell her, "Hold on one more day, because salvation is on the way." And what would you say to other seniors who are suffering abuse right now? I would tell them they are not alone, that it is not their fault, that they deserve dignity, respect, and love regardless of their age. That help is available, that speaking up isn't weakness, it's bravery, and that it is never, never too late to get your life back. The interview was published and went viral. We received thousands of calls in the following weeks. The foundation had to expand again. We opened 2 more offices. We hired more staff. The movement grew. 6 years after my rescue, on a sunny spring day, I was in Sarah's garden when my phone rang. It was David, my lawyer. "Eleanor, I have news. Jessica requested early release. It was denied. She will serve her full sentence." I felt a deep calm. "Thank you for informing me, David. There's something else." Michael also requested a sentence reduction based on good behavior. The judge considered it but finally decided he will serve at least 6 years before being eligible for parole. And when he gets out, he will have a permanent restraining order preventing him from contacting you. "That's fine," I said simply. That part of my life was closed, sealed, finished. That afternoon, sitting in the garden with a cup of hot tea, I reflected on my path. From victim to survivor to warrior. From invisible to spokesperson. Defeat to complete. My $6,000 monthly pension was now managed by me, with Sarah as a voluntary supervisor for transparency. I used part of it to live comfortably. Part I donated to the foundation. Part I saved for Sarah's grandchildren's future. I was 72 years old now. My hair was completely silver. My face showed lines of time and experience. But my eyes shone with purpose. My back was straight with regained dignity. My voice was strong with the confidence of someone who has survived the worst and come out stronger. Some betrayals do not deserve forgiveness. Some acts are so cruel they break bonds permanently. And that is okay. Forgiveness isn't always necessary to heal. Sometimes, justice is enough. Sometimes, purpose replaces forgiveness. I closed my eyes and felt the sun on my face. I heard Sarah's grandchildren laughing and playing inside the house. I smelled the flowers in the garden. I felt the warm cup in my hands. I was alive. I was free. I was at peace. And somewhere right now, there was a senior citizen being abused, feeling alone, losing hope. But thanks to the foundation, thanks to the laws we help change, thanks to the voices we refuse to silence, that senior had a chance. They had a number to call. They had people who would believe their story. They had hope. That was enough. That was everything. If this story touched you, subscribe to hear the next ones. Because there are thousands of stories like mine that need to be told. Stories of abuse that must be exposed. Stories of justice that must be celebrated. Someone needs to hear this. Maybe that someone is you. Or maybe you know someone who needs it. Share this. Talk about this. Because silence is the abuser's ally. And we refuse to be silenced.